Published 0649 Est, the 23rd of November 2017. Updated 0706 Est, the 23rd of November 2017. In recent years, Abu Dhabi has become cemented as the venue that brings the curtain down on the F1 season, despite rarely producing any on-track dramas since its introduction in 2009. This year is unlikely to be any different, but that's only because Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes have long since wrapped up both world championships. Instead, fans hoping for some tense last race drama will have to dwell on the past. To provide that sort of fix, there were few better venues than Adelaide and the previous home of the Australian Grand Prix. Ever present as the season finale from the mid-1980s through to the mid-1990s, the street circuit held within Victoria Park boasted a high-speed backstraight fit for a purpose-built venue that also offered the best overtaking opportunity. Loved by drivers, teams and fans, Adelaide provided some of F1's most iconic moments, including Nigel Mansell's dramatic tyre blowout in 1986, as well as the infamous collision between Michael Schumacher and Damon Hill that resulted in the German winning the first of his 7 titles. Despite its popularity, Adelaide was replaced as host for the Australian Grand Prix by Melbourne's Albert Park in 1996, where it remains to this day. Hill and Murray Walker helped provide a lap of the track from 1995, a race made famous by David Coulthard showing how not to enter the pit lane. Right here though, Sportsmail looks back at Adelaide with our picture special. Keke Rosberg comes under serious pressure from the Lotus of Ayrton Senna in the first Australian Grand Prix to feature in the World Championship, and although the Brazilian would eventually take the lead later in the race, he would retire with an engine failure. Rosberg would go on to triumph for Williams in what would be the 1982 World Champions' last Formula One victory and one of the most closely contested title battles in Formula One history. The final race of the season at Adelaide in 1986 saw 3 drivers in with a chance of winning the title. Clear favourite was Nigel Mansell, right as he is teased by Williams teammate Nelson Piquet, while Alain Prost looks on ahead of the title showdown between the trio. Mansell left only needed 3rd to win the World Championship, so was content to allow Piquet past during the race for 2nd place, which became 1st after Keke Rosberg's retirement. But with just 20 laps left, Mansell's left rear tyre dramatically exploded on the Brabham Straight at 180 miles per hour, putting the title in Piquet's lap, except that Williams feared what happened to Mansell could happen to Piquet, so through precaution pitted the Brazilian. That allowed Prost into the lead, and despite Piquet's fresher tyres, he couldn't close in fast enough to pass the Frenchman. The McLaren driver celebrates his victory and title win, with Piquet's Williams just over 4 seconds down the road, as well as the opening race of the season. There is also a driver's lineup at the end of the campaign. The class of 1987 has one notable absentee in the shape of Nigel Mansell, who had been injured following the previous race in Japan. Can you name the 26-strong field ahead of the 1987 Australian Grand Prix? Answers are at the bottom of the page. Race day in 1987 brought a dominant Ferrari performance as Gerhard Berger led home teammate Michele Alboreto. Having taken pole position, the fastest lap and race victory, while also leading every single lap despite having to overtake the fast-starting Nelson Piquet Burgess. Victory resulted in his only Formula One Grand Slam 1 year on, and it's another dominant one too. This time though it's for the all-conquering McLaren team, as Alain Prost has his hand held aloft by teammate Ayrton Senna following the Frenchman's victory in Adelaide. Even considering this was after Senna had become world champion, it shows that the relationship between the pair wasn't always bad at McLaren. Senna and Prost pose with the almost unbeatable McLaren MP44 as well as McLaren and Honda personnel. The car won 15 of the year's 16 races, only losing in Monza due to a Prost engine failure and an infamous Senna crash. Prost outscored Senna by 11 points but fell victim to the rule that only a driver's best 11 results counted towards the drivers' championship standings. If the glorious Adelaide sunshine summed up the McLaren camp at the end of 1988, then the torrential downpour a year later was rather fitting of the mood within the team. Granted, Prost was champion and McLaren were constructors' champions, but a bitter feud between Senna and Prost had hit boiling point as the Brazilian leads his teammate from the front at the start in a race that had to be restarted, with Prost refusing to take it. Senna dominated out in front before crashing into Martin Brundle while lapping the Brit. That allowed Thierry Boutsen to inherit the lead for Williams before triumphing in a chaotic race that timed out at 2 hours. Alessandro Nannini was second for Benetton, with Riccardo Patrese third in the sister Williams. The 1990 Australian Grand Prix was the 500th Formula One race and was marked with a photograph featuring the sport's world champions, including clockwise from top left James Hunt, Jackie Stewart, Denny Hulme, Jack Brabham, Ayrton Senna, Juan Manuel Fangio and Nelson Piquet. Alain Prost was among those absent, having not wanted to be within Senna's proximity. Adelaide was a favourite among teams and drivers, with the usual late spring sunshine in Australia, combined with the last race of the season giving an end-of-term feel and a chance for those within the paddock to celebrate the end of the campaign. Piquet triumphed for Benetton in 1990, taking his penultimate Formula One victory before retiring a year later. Although often baked in sunshine, Adelaide was prone to a downpour, which in 1991 led to the shortest Grand Prix ever. With enormous credit to the 26-strong field, there was not one accident at the start of the race. However, as rain intensified, 6 cars retired, leading to the race being stopped and Ayrton Senna above being declared the winner after just 14 laps. A forlorn-looking Ayrton Senna looks on from the pit wall as he watches 1992's dominant duo of Nigel Mansell and his Williams drive down the pit lane. Senna was desperate to replace the IndyCar-bound Brit for 1993, only to find Alain Prost blocking his path to the Grove outfit. At Adelaide, Senna and Mansell crashed out the race while battling for the lead on lap 18. The crash paved the way for Gerhard Berger to take victory in his final race for the McLaren team, as he celebrates on the podium with Benetton duo Michael Schumacher Wright and Martin Brundle, who finished second and third respectively 1 year on. And it was Senna taking not just his last victory in his final McLaren drive, but also his last in F1 before his tragic death. It was perhaps fitting he chose to mark the occasion by burying his feud with Alain Prost and raising the Frenchman's hand in his last race before retiring from the sport as the reigning world champion. By the time Adelaide held its next Grand Prix in 1994, a new era had arrived, with Senna and Prost gone while Nigel Mansell was only racing part-time. It didn't take long for its first big rivalry and highly controversial feud to develop, either as Damon Hill chases down Michael Schumacher for the lead and, with just 1 point separating them, the World Championship. The two infamously collided after Schumacher controversially chopped across to block Hill, putting the German out of the race. It meant the Williams driver only needed to finish 5th to win the World Championship, but having sustained heavy damage to his left front suspension was forced to pit and retire from the race. Schumacher waited trackside, where he retired to see if Hill would come back round, and after not seeing the Brit, couldn't resist a smile as he secured his first World Championship. Above, the driver celebrates the occasion as a Benetton colleague soaks the German with a box of water in the team's pit complex. Meanwhile, Mansell had taken pole before being passed by Schumacher and Hill at the start, only for their collision to allow the Williams driver to take the lead. After securing his last GP victory, the Brit celebrates on the podium with Ferrari's second-place driver Gerhard Berger and Martin Brundle's third-place McLaren. The final Grand Prix, to be held at Adelaide in 1995, got off to a horrific start after Mika Hakkinen was rushed to hospital after suffering a left rear puncture while trying to turn onto the Brabham Straight, which led to a 100 mph crash into a tyre barrier during practice. The Finn suffered a fractured skull but eventually made a full recovery in time to return for the 1996 campaign. Hill had long lost the World Championship to Schumacher again, but helped Adelaide sign off from F1 with one of the sport's most dominating wins, having lapped the entire field twice, as he celebrates with Ligier's Olivier Panis left, who finished second, and Gianni Morbidelli right, whose third place helped the Footwork team achieve their only F1 podium. 1987 drivers line up: top row Stefano Modena Brabham, Michele Alboreto Ferrari, Stefan Johansson McLaren, Alain Prost McLaren, Eddie Cheever Arrows, Jonathan Palmer Tyrrell, Yannick Dalmas Lola, Derek Warwick Arrows, Satoru Nakajima Lotus, Thierry Boutsen Benetton, Adrian Campos Minardi, Ivan Capelli March, Riccardo Patrese Williams. Bottom row: Christian Danazak Speed, Andrea de Cesaris Brabham, Gerhard Berger Ferrari, Pierluigi Ginzani Ligier, Philippe Alliot Lola, Philippe Strafe Tyrrell, Nelson Piquet Williams, Martin Brundle Zak Speed, René Arnoux Ligier, Ayrton Senna Lotus, Teo Fabi Benetton, Alessandro Nannini Minardi, Roberto Marino AGS.